Maybe you would like to tell us and show us how it goes with the long swing and the short swing.
So basically, I don't really call it short swing. I call it head swing. There's different ways to swing, and it's really based on the idea that our eyes can only see a tiny, tiny spot clear at once. Bates called it central fixation. I usually call it central focus, but meaning the perfect point of clarity is very, very tiny. Like think of a pinhead, right? So we have that peripheral field and we have the whole picture. But what you want your eyes to do are making these really and those happen automatically as well, like the breath and the blinking. They make really tiny little jumps and they're called saccadic eye movements. And the swing is a great way to improve them. You can think of your head, like you want your eyes to be center, right? You want the eyes to be center of the head. And so basically with the head swing, you just turn your head side to side, but your eyes, as if you kind of think of your eyes brushing the environment, right? The head is turning and the eyes are just kind of part of the environment, of the head and just moving along. You're not trying to look at something specific. You're just moving, but your eyes are not making like ping pong jumps. Yeah, I see that with poor vision, that people's nose is there, but the eye's already there, or they get stuck on something. So they make these big movements instead of these fine little vibrations. And the long swing is basically a version that I can't really show you because you only see my chest and my head. But basically your feet like a little further than hips width apart, and then you pivot on one foot. And then you basically swing it. Oops, now my headphones are in the way. But you basically swing your whole body. Like think of your nose and your navel being in one line. And so you're shifting your hips like in a 180-degree circle. And what I like to use also, is a so-called field divider. So this is a little device that I show my students, and it has two colors. And when we look straight, the colors get flipped we see them with a little gap in between if we have good binocular vision. This is because both eyes are connected to both sides of the brain. But what this tool does, if somebody's eyes in the swing, like let's say they always go ahead, right? If I would always look ahead, I would only see pink. And if I get like going this way and I only look this way, I only see green. So when they see both colors with a little gap in between, they know that the eyes are pretty much centered. So this is a great tool. I call it a nose card. It's technically known as a field divider, but this is a great tool that I also use with students.
Can you show it again? Because
yes.
I also use those, but I find that the structure you have is very fashionable. Where did you find that? I guess that's
I learned that from my teacher. But basically, this is what the frame. You can use any frame. I like those frames better than the ones that have this is like a cheap, like, what is it called? The bicycle, people that do the bicycle racing, right?
Yes. And you can remove, of course.
Yeah. And then it's a little bit of they're called blue tack, or it's like some kind of, it's not sticky, but it's moldable putty. And I'm sure there's better ways to build this that looks more professional. And then you just have two different neon colors. And then you make sure that it's in the center of your head so that it's not tilted to one side. And I find this to be really helpful for the swing for a lot. Like I always have my students, this is another thing I teach them, do the long swing, film yourself, like use your phone. Don't look at the phone, because if you look at the phone, your eyes are not really making the little jumps. You look right above it, but basically, do this and film yourself, and then they can see their own eye movements. And like, oh, now I know what you mean. And then they do it with a nose card and they see how smoother it is. So yeah, this is something because it's hard to see as a teacher, especially on Zoom, like what they're doing when they're not in the center, when their head is turned to the side. You can't really tell as much in the swing. So this is a great way to see your own eye movements.
Mm-hmm. That's an amazing trick that you just taught us, me included, about the filming and the using the nose card. So that you can monitor how long the jumps are, and if they're like the little saccadic or if they're actually too big, too long. This is very good. We also use this nose card with how do you call it? The colors, the flashy colors.
Oh, neon colors.
Neon colors, yes.
Yeah. You want really bright colors and that reflect light, and so it could be orange and green or yellow, and you want different colors that you can clearly differentiate. So I have pink and green in this case. Sometimes if one eye is very dominant or very let's say one eye is very challenged and the other eye is very dominant, then I would give the eye with that has really good vision a black card and the other one a really bright yellow, so that you stimulate the eye that's more challenged. So there's a lot of things you can do with this thing.
Yeah, I was going to mention that the way I would do it also is to put the more cool color, like the green that is more encouraging for relaxation to the eye that's more active, and the red, orange, more stimulating color to the one that's working less. And then you just flip it according to what you're perceiving. Yeah, so I'll write down also about the black one. So it's very nice. I'm also learning while listening to you. Very, very nice. Yeah, so do you have other toys around you that you could show us? But because we actually use lots of little toys, I call them like that, like lots of resources that we can use as a support for our practices and exercises. And very often it's things that anyone can do at home with things they have, or buying really cheap things. Like you don't really need to spend that much money to build toys that you can use to improve your vision. You can do a lot of it just using natural resources around you and your own body. But
let me see what I have here. I have a lot of things. So this is something I built. So, we teach diverging and converging, right? And diverging is, so basically what you do with this practice is you either, there's two different ways you can use these dots. Converging would be crossing your eyes in front, which was always easy for me because I have a convergent squint as a kid. And so crossing my eyes and seeing 3 dots was easy. But looking in the distance, like what you do with magic eye books, those books, I have them in my shelf, but the ones that have all these squiggly lines, and when you soften the gaze and pretend to look through, you see these cool 3D things pop up. I could never do that as a kid. And it was like frustrating. Like my family, we would go to a science museum and then we would go to the gift store. There's always these books, right? And everybody in my family say, look at this cool, like whatever. And I'm like what? So I built this thing because you can actually look through, and I can show you the pretty side. You can actually look through, and then I can see the 3 dots. And that helped me to practice the diverging versus pretending, having them printed on and then pretending to look through. That was really helpful for me. And the reason I did different distances is it's easier when they're closer together. And instead of having like only 2 that you then move further apart, you can then slowly, once you have the diverged gaze, slowly move down. So this is something I'm practicing a lot because I'm still not perfect with my diverging. Like even though I have great distance vision, the diverging itself is something I struggle with.
Yeah, so it's a beautiful chart that you built there with all those colors and it being transparent. It helps a lot so that people understand the principle on which this page works is that, well, we have 2 eyes. So if we look at the finger, with one eye, we just see one finger. But if we look beyond the finger, for example, the computer, then I will see 1 finger, 2 fingers, I mean, because this eye is seeing like this and the other is seeing like that. But it's going beyond. So in the field, you have both of them. So now if you have 2 fingers or 2 dots, like what you have, so you can, and you look beyond or near, you see 4 of them, yeah? But then the idea, the whole point is to merge the 2 in the middle so that you see 3 of them, and then it gives an impression of 3D vision, that it's fun, and that it also helps improving the vision because you're working with your convergence, but also with your brain's ability to merge, so to do the fusion of both images.
Yeah, and if you don't see 2, I noticed with my mom, when I did this with my mom for the first time, we did the 2 fingers in a row, and I said, look at that finger, that one that's further away, and how many do you see? And she's like, oh, I see 1. And she couldn't get it. She's like, why would I see 2? I'm like, your eyes see 2 different things. She's like, what? Because, we can, wherever we focus on, we only see 1, unless you have double vision, you only see 1. But when you're not looking at, you see 2. And usually our brain kind of, we don't pay attention. Like if you look at your phone, right, you would see 2 completely, would see, but we don't pay attention to that. So I had to cover one eye and then the other, right, like a squint shut. And then you realize how that front finger is like jumping. And you're like, oh, there is actually 2. And so she got that eventually. Yeah, so don't freak out if you don't see two right away. You can definitely, this is something that you would need to practice for sure.
Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, because of what you say, the brain is interpreting what we see and doing lots of operations on what we see, like erasing 20% of the light impulses that get to our eyes because they don't make sense to forms or shapes that we have learned. And of course, it's switching the image around because well, on the retina, it's reverse, but of course we can triangulate with our touch and see that, well, my head is, the neck is going down, it's not going up, etc. So, and it's connecting it to what's relevant in the situation and memories we have and the emotions and what we have learned and what we imagine and beliefs and lots of other things. So making perception relevant to the present moment, yeah, as you said, we, with each eye, see something different. They're a little bit apart, but to make sense of reality, the brain makes it one. But what we're looking at, but beyond or closer, there's two of them. But as you said, the brain tends to not pay attention at that, so it still makes sense. So, and the good news is that not only can we train our brain to make sure that we are actually perceiving the two images, like when we are training this binocular sight, but we can also enrich the shapes of perception and the ability to perceive by enriching mental models on how the world works and what we see and what is there. And when we go into that direction, it's fascinating because it really opens the doors of perception, and we can really see more and more and more and more of what is there. And well, anyway, little sidewalk.
I love that because I use visual illusions also to teach people, you know, not just the halos that you see around letters, but visual illusions. I have a book here that's again in my bookshelf. My headphones are not long enough, but it's like, you know, this is like your perception. And Bates even said it, and I'm totally lacking the exact quote, but basically the impression in the retina is not what we see. We see the interpretation of that impression in our brain. And visual illusions, everybody gets it. Like, oh yeah, it's a visual illusion. So it's not really that way. And then people understand that what they see is really an interpretation, right? It's, remember that thing that went on with that dress that was like black and blue, and some people saw it like white and gold. Remember that whole like
yes,
and I'm like, you know, that was like people were really fighting about this, like what is the dress really like? And it's so interesting how, you know, we have this different perception about it. And anyway.
Yes, and how context is extremely important for the brain to choose if it's, I don't know if it was gold or green and red. It depends a lot on what is in the context around for the brain to make that decision. So when we go in that direction, we can also understand that it's possible to train our vision at the mental level, because what we see is an interpretation. We can enrich our interpretations. We can transform our interpretations. If we are seeing a projection, well, let's check the programs of projection and interpretation that we're working with. And when we do that, not only does eyesight transform, but vision transforms. Your vision of yourself, your vision of the world, your vision of what you are doing, and the depths of the work that we can do is really amazing. I'm still surprised every day by the transformations and the realizations of the students and my own and the colleagues I talk to.
And I love what you said about vision versus eyesight. Sorry to interrupt you, but this is something like every student tells me, oh, I thought this was about eyesight. And then they're like, it's so much bigger. Insight and vision. And I like to say natural vision improvement. I found that Google searches perform better when you say eyesight because people search for eyesight, but I love vision because it's so much bigger than your eyesight. So sorry for interrupting you, but you're absolutely right about that. Like,
you are right, and you're touching here something we've also had the time to talk about in other contexts, and that is between what people are looking for and what the depth and the width of the reality of that field is. It's very, very different. Like, yes, people are probably when they when their eyesight gets worse and they lose perception, that's what they're anxious about, and that's what they will be looking for. And then by taking the steps towards better eyesight, the doors open, and you notice that it's actually about vision. And I have another one that you probably know in that direction. Like when we start working, and this is one of the reasons why I start with the physical level, maybe you too, I don't know. But people always ask about exercises. I want an exercise for if I'm nearsighted or farsighted, or if I have astigmatism or whatever, and they want for specific exercises for specific symptoms. And for me, a lot of the work is to bring them from that way of seeing things into the exercise or practice or activity. It's just the context within which you are going to become aware of something, you're going to learn something. But it's really not like doing push-ups. That wouldn't make any sense. And but there's a whole path of the person getting more relaxed and flexible and open-minded, so that they can look at things from another angle, and get that the exercise itself was not really the thing, but how they change perspectives within the context of that activity or exercise. And it's lots of fun to observe this over and over. What's your experience with this kind of thing?
Exactly the same. Everybody is thinking about exercises and what do I do for nearsightedness? What do I do for astigmatism? And sometimes I give them a little bit like, okay, here's a few things that are helpful for that. But usually I'm like, it's about understanding a concept. First of all, you have to understand, okay, what is central fixation, for instance? Like, and I didn't get that initially. And once you understand the concept, then we use these exercises or practices so you actually embody and see that in action, and then eventually it becomes a habit, right? So, but that's the journey. This is exactly what I'm teaching, and it's like, yeah, sometimes people are like, how many minutes a day do I need to do palming, and how many? And this is another thing. I don't like to give these prescriptions, right? Because I'm like, everybody is different. If you get the same results in 2 minutes of palming than you get in 10, why would you do 10 minutes? Right? Unless you have a lot of time on your hands. So to me, it's also, and maybe that's my German background, but it's also being efficient, so to get the most out of it, but really recognize what I call the strains and gains. So I have everybody start with like journaling. Your strains is everything that makes your vision worse. And people usually say, oh yeah, light, if it's dark or bright, maybe morning and evening. But when I get more like, what about your emotional state? What about the task you're doing? And I always use the example, I hate bookkeeping, like looking at Excel spreadsheets. It's like, I feel like the vampire, it's like, so this, just looking at that stuff kind of made my vision blurry versus doing something fun, like video editing, which I love. I have a creative background so how is the task that you're doing and your attitude toward the task changing how relaxed you are and how your vision is, right? So it gets into so many different levels, right? Versus just the exterior environmental setup that most people just relate to initially as a way of noticing what makes their vision best and what makes it worse. So yeah, this is, and sometimes I have clients say like 3 months, 4 months, say, I still don't know. I don't really know. Like I know. And it's mindset. This is the other piece. It's mindset. Oh my God. You have to, and we all have that. And I love this book by Carol Dweck. It's just called Mindset, and she talks about the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. And the growth mindset really means that failure is just a way of learning, and you have to apply yourself. And she calls it effort. I don't like the word effort in connection to vision, but I like taking action or commitment or practicing, doing it, and then noticing how things change. And if you give up at the first challenge, right, that's where you really have breakthroughs, is when things are challenging and difficult. And so that's a huge piece too, the mindset. If people don't see results right away, and some people do, and that's my goal, that they see results right away, but some people don't. And then, not giving up right away, but really sticking with it.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned all of this. Indeed, the idea is that those awarenesses and new realizations become habits, so that you automatically see clear every day with the inner insight and vision, and also the physical, physiological adjustments in the eyes and in the rest of the body. And I also like juggle with people between two concepts. When they ask like how many times I have to do this per day and for how long, in the beginning I tell them do it as long as it's fun and it's pleasant. Like if it feels good, then it's a good timing. If you start to feel uncomfortable, well, your body is telling you that let's move on to the next thing. Or if you get bored, what's the point? So in the beginning, I tell them that because first I want them to observe, because usually they're a lot in their minds and not so much in their bodies, and I want them to become aware of the signals of their bodies. So that they respect themselves and they're more loving and caring for themselves, but also because if it being fun and pleasant is the criteria, they're going to keep being motivated and stimulated. In the beginning, for me, it's important so that they do it enough that they see results quickly as well. And then they reach a point at which I encourage them to go to the places that they were resisting, like to go face the challenges. You didn't, like today, I just had a webinar with some of my students, and one of them was saying, I don't know why, but I don't want to wear the patch and play with the balls. I feel I'm not safe. And we've been like 6 weeks through the process, so, and there's a couple more left. So I was telling her, okay, I think now's the time to create the safe space so that you are okay to play with the balls. You've done all of these other things and they've been working. But when you do this, when you face this challenge, probably there's going to be a huge improvement. And so, yeah, there's like the comfortable, fun, easy to do, giving results fast, and then facing the challenges, like going into to touch the bone, the deep cause. That's something that we share in this work, like, yeah, going to the root of the cause and not just putting patches or glasses or some.
I love that you said the fun and comfort. That's something I haven't said yet, but I think that's a good thing that I might steal from you, because it's like, you're right, it needs to be fun, because when it's too difficult right away, then people give up. But I usually also say, when at the end I say, your protocol is anything that relaxes you, that you feels good, like exactly, it feels good, and anything that is a challenge. So don't avoid the challenges, but also don't push yourself too far, because if you push yourself too far, same with diopter, like if people drop too much in terms of diopters, then they keep straining against it if it's too much of a drop. And everybody is different, right? Some people can only drop a quarter diopter in their strength, and other people can go full diopter. So it really varies, and being more in tune of what you need versus thinking more is better is not always, yeah.
Nope. Yeah, not necessarily. Yeah, and also it's good for people to be aware that the process is not, it's rarely linear. For some people it is, and for some people it's instant, but for most people it's like they improve and then they get stuck, or they even get a little bit worse and they improve again and they get stuck, and then but the tendency is for improvement in general. And sometimes people are really frustrated when they get stuck or when it gets worse. And I tell them, this is study time. I mean, this moment is as useful as any other time when you're improving. Watch what's happening now. What are you doing? What are you thinking with whom you are staying? What's happening in your body? And learn from it. This is useful information you can use also for your progress.
I love that. I love that. And I also teach a yogic principle called aparigraha, and it basically translates to non-attachment. And the concept is that you practice regardless of the outcome. So you're not saying, okay, 2 minutes of palming, I should see, one line further down, 5 minutes of palm, so detach yourself from a specific outcome. It doesn't mean I always start with setting goals. I think setting goals is really important, to have that little carrot dangling there. But at the same time, don't attach yourself to doing something an X amount of time, and then this has to happen, and then you relax more, because the more pressure you put on yourself, I had a student who would always check her vision on the eye chart, took her hands off, and then look. I'm like, no, just palm, see how you feel. Like, don't assess yourself all the time. You can make an eye chart part of your living arrangements, making it a picture. It's just shapes. It's just shapes on black shapes on white, or white shapes on black. But don't obsessively check. So non-attachment is, and I love what you said also, like, use this time. How are you reacting to failures or to challenges really is way more important than how you react to successes, because that's pretty easy, right? We feel great if something is great on working out.
Yeah, absolutely.